What an excellent day for an exorcism.
Welcome everyone, and happy Halloween on a special spooky A24 vibe discussion, where we will be reviewing the 1973 horror classic, The Exorcist. As I've previously mentioned in our Black Coat's Daughter podcast, I'm a good Catholic boy, so I'm drinking wine tonight. Kelly, what are you drinking?
Good evening, boys and girls, young and old, but mostly young. Be very afraid, because it's me, Kelly, and I'm drinking red wine, because I like to drink red wine, and so I'm doing it again. Happy Halloween!
Kevin, what are you drinking?
Good evening, world. This is Kevin K. Konchak, and tonight I am drinking a fall-inspired beverage, apple cider and rye whiskey. Yes, more whiskey for this man. Delicious and nutritious.
Oh, hey everybody, this is Cole William Gibson. I'm just drinking Whistling Pig Pit Viper Edition. I don't know if I got necessarily the memo about what's happening, but I'm excited to be here, and yeah, I don't know what an exorcist is, so we'll see how it goes.
Sounds like you got some rocks in there, like Father Karras. He likes it on the rocks, but the mom was not able to provide him that. Yeah.
I mean, rocks is the way to go. I think people that drink whiskey warm and hot is kind of weird, in my opinion. Not a big fan. I like my drinks cold and my food hot. My food's cold and my drinks are hot. I don't really like what's going on.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, buddy. Yeah, whiskey needs to be cold. I agree.
A24 on the Rocks.
All right, let's get into the movie, shall we? The Exorcist is based on a 1971 best-selling novel by William Peter Blatty, and this book was inspired by an alleged real exorcism that happened to a child named Roland Doe in 1949 outside of St. Louis, Missouri. Ooh. Roland Doe's house is still there today and is known as the Exorcist House. Warner Bros. Eventually bought the rights to produce this film with William Peter Blatty. A couple fun facts about the pre-production. Stanley Kubrick was asked to direct this film before William Friedkin, but it didn't work out due to timing. Jane Fonda and Audrey Hepburn were both considered to play Reagan's mother. It was another timing issue with Audrey Hepburn. Meanwhile, Jane Fonda called it a piece of capitalist bullshit. Jack Nicholson, Paul Newman, and Marlon Brando were considered in casting to play Father Karras. But after Friedkin was hired as the director, he insisted that they cast a lesser-known actor and eventually found Jason Miller. They actually cast a different actor named Stacy Keach to play Father Karras at first and had him signed to a contract, but Jason Miller insisted that he would pay for a flight to LA and do a screen test for Friedkin, and Friedkin loved his screen test so much that he convinced Warner Bros. To buy Stacy Keach out of his contract and to cast Jason Miller instead. So I watched this documentary called Leap of Faith, where William Friedkin basically just sat down for an interview and explained the whole process of making this film. And there is so much lore behind this film. It was quite a surprise that Friedkin decided to direct this film in the first place. At the time, the horror genre was not as well respected in film circles, and Friedkin had just won Best Director in 1971 for directing the film The French Connection. And many people thought Friedkin was making a huge mistake in choosing to direct The Exorcist. The production of this movie seemed extremely cursed from the start. One day, a fire broke out on set and wasn't put out for 6 hours, and every room on set was burnt down besides Reagan's bedroom. One of the cameramen's wives experienced a stillbirth and death of a child. Ellen Burstyn, who played Reagan's mother, Chris, hit the floor so hard in one of the possession scenes that she received a permanent spinal injury that she still deals with to this day. A security guard died during filming. Linda Blair's grandfather died during filming, and she played Reagan. The actor that played Brooke Dennings in the film died a month before the film was released, and the actress that played Father Karras' mother also died not long before the film was released. These two characters obviously died in the film too. During production, Friedkin actually hired a Jesuit priest to exorcise the set because it was considered so cursed. So, Kevin, hearing all this, I know you're not the biggest believer in faith. Do you think this is all mere coincidence, or was it perhaps the devil's work?
Well, are you asking me as a layman, or someone who's enjoying this film as someone who's trying to immerse himself as the film?
I'll say a layman. I want to hear a skeptic's perspective on how could all of this happen during the making of this film, and we could just be like, it was just mere coincidence.
Well, I mean, you just said it. It's truly mere coincidence. I think there's 1,000 things that happen during a filming, and you can pick and choose the things that happen to fit the narrative that are also particularly spooky and creepy. I'm not going to downplay them as being particularly spooky and creepy. Those things absolutely happened. But I'm certainly not here to profess any profound belief that Satan himself was influencing the filming of this film because Satan happened to be the topic. That's not where my position is, and I don't think most people watching this probably feel that way. But I do appreciate your lore, because that's things that I had no idea even happened during the filming of this, and it does make you question, when talking about demonic possession, does demonic possession come to your film set? I don't believe so, but I bet you someone else on this podcast might believe differently.
Kelly, are you a believer?
I think Satan has better things to do than mess up a film set.
But what about the demon
I'm sorry, I
Pazuzu?
shouldn't laugh. That's fucking perfect.
Yeah. What about the demon
better
Pazuzu?
things to do.
I don't know about that demon. I'm not deep in the occult, so I don't know. There's like lieutenants and captains and all these kind of things with all these different demons. I don't know what their roles are or what they do, but I do believe in mass hysteria. And I think that this movie comes out. We are having a resurgence of like the satanic panic right now in pop culture. If you look at like the backlash to like Doja Cat's aesthetic and many other celebrities who are kind of like adopting that almost as like a throwback to back then. But this movie also comes out at almost like the start of the satanic panic. Maybe it had to do with even kind of starting it, and also starting this whole fear of Ouija boards, which definitely has been thrown onto me as I grew up. I was like, I'll never touch one. I don't want demons to come into my life. So I definitely think, while I am a believer in these kind of dark forces, and I actually do think that people can become possessed by demons, I'll say it, I do believe that this can happen. I don't think that this movie is really a priority for a demon to kind of possess, and I think that even just as much as real, if not more prevalent, is mass hysteria. So if a lot of bad things are happening on a site, a movie site in this case, it leads the kind of like energy of a whole group of people to keep looking for the bad things that are happening and all attribute it to one cause.
Cole, are you going to refute them?
Yeah, so as one of the greatest quarterbacks of our generation and Eric Kiska's favorite player, Aaron Rodgers, once said, manifestation is really everything, right? So if you manifest that you're doing a movie about exorcism, bad things are going to happen. When it rains, it pours. And I'm a big believer of kind of like the bad energy. If it, when it rains, it pours. It really does, at least in my experience or how I view things. If a bunch of bad things start happening, you're only going to see the bad things happen. It's kind of like the movie 23, when that movie came out and Jim Carrey was all spooky. Everyone was like, holy shit, there's 23 everywhere. I'm seeing 23 everywhere. It's like bad stuff always happens, and you always see the number 23, but now you're like focused on it. So that's kind of my position on it. Obviously, a lot of bad stuff happened, and it's kind of spooky and cool to talk about. But Roger said it right: manifestation, baby.
Kevin, were you going to add on to that?
I mean, I was going to add on, but it also is talking about a theme within the film itself. When you're talking about mass hysteria, we get the early scene with our main actress acting in the film, where there's protesters on the street, and the hysteria that we see in the movement. I'm not even sure what exactly movement they were protesting, to be honest with you.
I think that was Vietnam. Was it?
It might have
I
been.
think it was anti-war protest.
It was university protest.
This was the year Vietnam actually ended. They shot it while it was still going on.
And I asked myself the question, why include that scene?
right? Other than to establish her as an A-list actress that should be respected because she's an actress, why make it specifically about being on the steps protesting whatever it was? Maybe it's part of this discussion that we're having. I'm not sure. I just thought it was an interesting take and kind of why we have something that kind of sticks out as someone who's standing up for a belief one way or another, who ends up being someone who doesn't actually have religious beliefs, as we find out later in the film.
For sure. Well, Kelly, you were right. I would say this film definitely had a bit to start, with... They kind of started Satanic Panic, because many say that this was the first paranormal horror film ever made, and is up there with Psycho as one of the most inspirational films of all time, not just to horror films, but to all films. Rosemary's Baby was made a few years prior to this, but horror fans say that Rosemary's Baby is more of a satanic cult film than a paranormal horror film. After The Exorcist, it is fair to say that Hollywood was never quite the same. The Exorcist came out on December 26, 1973. That's right, the day after Christmas. Happy birthday, Jesus. Some theaters provided barf bags for people on entrance. There were many people that fainted while watching this, including one person that fainted and broke her jaw and unsuccessfully attempted to sue Warner Bros. Some people even had heart attacks and miscarriages during the viewing of The Exorcist. I'd imagine it was almost like if you went back in time and actually gave a Cheeto to a pilgrim. When people realized that film could give audiences this kind of reaction, it changed filmmaking forever. It was the first horror movie to be nominated for Best Picture, and it grossed $112 million in theaters. Adjusted for inflation today, that would be $1.8 billion, which is a record that was not broken until the remake of Stephen King's It that came out a few years ago in 2017. Quick edit here, it was a record that was not broken for horror films until Stephen King's It in 2017. Just horror films, not all films.
Holy shit,
Yep.
Jesus Christ, that's insane.
It's a huge
I didn't
film.
know any
Yeah.
of that.
So, Kelly, I'll ask you first, what is your previous experience with this movie?
The first time I saw The Exorcist was long ago. Eric and I were dating, and we went to Washington, D.C. within 6 months of us dating or so, and it was our first trip away. And I had not ever seen The Exorcist, and Eric says, if we're going here, we're gonna go to The Exorcist stairs. And I said, what the heck are you talking about? And then he showed me the movie, so we watched it together at the place we rented in DC, and then we went to Georgetown either maybe that night or the night after, and we went and found those stairs and admired a flight of stairs outside, I suppose.
They're spooky stairs.
That's right.
They're very spooky.
Scary
Very spooky.
things
And we had really good
happen here.
tacos right before, so it was worth the trip.
Yeah, great tacos. I love DC. Just shout out DC real quick.
Yep, shout out DC. Shout out DC.
But yeah, that was my first experience. So Eric was there for everyone else who wasn't there. I like horror movies, but I can't say that I've seen all of them. And all the ones that I should give respect to, I feel like they're so old now. My first scary movie that I ever watched when I was in middle school was The Grudge. And The Grudge is a lot scarier than this one. So I'm not even trying to sound snobby, my threshold for fear is much higher than this, but that's literally what I'm saying. So unfortunately, that's happening. But I try to put myself into the context of when this movie came out and what it could have been. And I could see how it would be life-changing for a lot of people.
Giving a Cheeto to a pilgrim.
Yeah. Showing Velcro to, I don't know, ancient Egyptians.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It had its time and its place. Obviously, it made a huge impact on culture. The cheese factor is there for me. And I don't know if I can shake it away just being who I am and what I had seen before I came into this movie.
Cole, what was your first experience watching this film?
Yeah, so my first experience was, I think I was a freshman in high school when I saw it. So that would have been 2008, maybe, I think. Yeah, that sounds about right. I watched it with a group of friends. I enjoyed the movie. I didn't think it was necessarily the super spooky, but again, you're watching a movie with a group of friends having a good time. May have had some beverages that were not of age at the time. Overall, I thought it was a decent movie, but I never watched it since then. So it was very refreshing to kind of go back and with my greater appreciation of film and cinema and understanding a lot of the history behind it. But yeah, my first viewing was just with my buddies. We had a good time. We were real big fans, and we would all get together, watch some scary movies, and also play like spooky games. So that was a kind of a little pastime we had while we enjoyed some beverages.
And I explained this in the Black Coat's daughter podcast, but the first time I saw this film, I was 8, and I had 2 older sisters who watched a lot of horror films, and I was growing up Catholic, so it scared the living shit out of me, and for 15 more years, probably until my early 20s at least, I was scared of getting possessed by a demon. So this film has a lot of cause in some of the anxieties in my life. And Kevin, I know this is the first time you've watched it, right? But I mean, I'm guessing you heard of it before.
Oh yeah. So, as everybody else, there's The Exorcist lives in pop culture and reference. I know of all of the famous scenes, and which is pretty unique. So the first time I've watched The Exorcist was literally last night. So sitting down in my basement by myself, turned the lights off, and was like, "All right, we're gonna go ahead and do this." And I watched the whole thing, and honestly, it kind of compelled me. It was pretty much a pretty entertaining film from start to finish, even though it was campy and had all those moments. But I knew the scenes that were most famous in the film before I ever saw the film. So I knew about the spider scene. I knew about the rotating head. I knew about the projectile vomiting. I knew about the ceiling scene. Like, these are famous scenes for a reason. And when you see them in the film, you go, oh, that's why they're cool, because they're accompanied by excellent soundtrack or great filming or lighting or direction or whatever it may be. They made those scenes special, and that's why they stand out in this film. And I thought that was really cool to see those scenes that I knew in pop culture and reference without actually knowing them, and then I saw them and was like, brilliant. So I watched the spider walk, crab walk scene multiple times because I wanted to hear it and like listen to the soundtrack.
Wow.
As she's coming down the scenes, I stopped it and rewinded it again. I wanted to hear like, why is this so famous? Because on first watching, I was like, well, that's creepy, but why is it that creepy? And it's because the soundtrack sets you up so perfectly.
Yeah.
As the strings hit and she comes crawling down the stairs, it sounds like a spider scuttling as she comes running down, and then you get the viewpoint of the blood running down the mouth, and it's just impactful at the time. So I appreciated it a lot more after the first watch, and I think it's be one that I'd like to watch pretty much every year because I think it's pretty cool.
Hell yeah. Yeah, fun fact, that spider walk scene was not in the original 1973 version of The Exorcist, and that is the version that's on HBO Max right now. So, yeah, like we didn't see that scene when we watched it this time, but that is a very famous scene. They re-released it in 2000 and added that scene in there. And so kind of every millennial that's seen this film has that scene burned into their mind now too. So, yeah. So anyway, the first 10 minutes of this film was actually shot in Iraq, and it was based off the prologue of the book, so it wasn't even in the main part of the novel. Friedkin insisted that these first 10 minutes be put in the movie because he thought it set the tone for the whole film. The fact that these people are facing an ancient supernatural power. And actually, if you go back after you've watched the film, you might even be able to pick out some Easter eggs with how the whole film will unfold, and some think these first 10 minutes are Father Merrin foreseeing his own death. Many people, including Bernard Herrmann, a music composer who composed the score for Psycho, told Friedkin that these first 10 minutes were completely unnecessary. This led Friedkin to firing Herrmann from composing The Exorcist, on top of the fact that he felt his score was tonally off. So, Cole, you're a big fan of short and succinct 90-minute films. Did you find these first 10 minutes necessary?
To be honest, like 90% through the film, I thought it was completely unnecessary. But like the last, 10%, it kind of all started to come together and make sense. And, I'd watched it so long ago, I really didn't remember a lot of it. But I think if I went back and rewatched it now, I do think that the Iraq scene does add some a little kind of Easter egg. And if you're a repeat viewer, it gives you that little tidbit of replayability that you're looking for in some of these films. So I do think now that it does. But if you go into it fresh, and have never seen it before, you're probably wondering what the hell is going on, because that's genuinely what I thought. I was like, I don't understand what's happening, and it's like shows a picture of a statue of, you know, I guess the devil.
Pazuzu. It's a demon, Pazuzu.
Yeah, Pazuzu, who they never mention, but you know, after doing a little research, they like you find out that that's who it is. But yeah, I thought this is kind of weird, and then it just does a hard cut, and I'm like, all right, man, let's just keep rolling with it. But then you start piecing together some stuff towards the very end of the film, and you're like, okay, I get it. And
yeah, Pazuzu was an ancient demon in ancient Mesopotamia that people would call upon if you wanted. It was like a demon of wind. So if you wanted wind to wreck somebody's home, then you would call upon Pazuzu, and that actually kind of makes sense with all the wind that's kind of flowing in and out of Reagan's room at all times. Kelly, did you find these first 10 minutes necessary?
I like them because they settle me and they make me pay attention to the movie right away. As opposed to, like, I really like Halloween, but I feel like it just, like, drops you off, like, in where the whole movie's going to be right away. There's something special about, like, here's kind of like an offshoot. Here's something that's, like, probably foreign to most of the audience that kind of just grabs your attention. And then by the time that we're reintroduced to that priest, he just seems like the biggest, most professional badass that we could possibly hope for to, like, help us out, especially with them kind of setting it up like the whole Catholic Church is like, we don't even do exorcisms anymore, but we do know one guy. And then the audience is like, oh, I know that guy. And it also makes me think, on Netflix, there's a series called Midnight Mass, which I really, really liked. And it has kind of a similar idea where a priest then in that story goes to like Mecca and all of these kind of ancient places. And there's something about the Middle East that's this perfect conglomeration of like religious roots. And also it's like where like mathematics and physics and a lot of these like scientific areas and reason come from. Like it's the root of both of these things, and also arguably humanity as a whole. So kind of centering a lot of these very serious themes for all of humanity in that geographic location makes a lot of sense. So I liked that they incorporated it.
For sure. So I previously mentioned Friedkin fired Bernard Herrmann, the composer, and he actually hired another composer after Herrmann named Lalo Schifrin, and he composed a very grand theme for this film that was much more cinematic. Friedkin did not like this either, as he wanted a much more minimal theme. So the final soundtrack of this film was songs that were picked off 33 different LPs that Friedkin listened to, and that includes the main theme of the film, which is Tubular Bells by Mike Oldfield. And the music during the title card, that kind of, was actually musician Jack Nietzsche rubbing his hand over a wine glass. William Friedkin said he did not want a grand theme because he, quote, wanted the music to sound like a cold hand on the back of the neck. Kevin, do you think our director William Friedkin did the right thing by choosing to not have a grand cinematic theme throughout this film?
Absolutely, but even in his attempt to not create a grand cinematic theme, he still created a very famous theme regardless, which I find to be just ironic and fantastic. So, although we only get it in, twice and throughout the entire film, in the very beginning and towards the end, where we get that, I think it's the piano vibe, right? Where I can't describe it, but if you could hear it, you'd absolutely recognize it. And you know that whether it's the theme to The Exorcist, you do know it as a theme to a horror movie, period. Like if you polled people on the street, I think they would agree.
Or you
Kelly?
know it to a theme from Death Note, the anime. It's extremely similar.
Ooh.
It's
Exactly.
in there too, yeah. That's what Kelly kept pointing out, and I think it is. Yeah.
I think that the idea that they do that is incredibly important, but they also, I think that his direction of not wanting an overarching theme and having the actors and the noise and the ambience, all of that speak for itself, was very important, and it really sold the possession as being totally real, because you were looking at that creature, at that actress, at that moment, and not worrying about the sound that was happening behind it.
Definitely. Okay. Right after the whole Iraq scene, we meet our main characters, Reagan McNeil, her mother, Chris McNeil, and Father Karras. And there really is no possession in the first hour of this film. The first hour kind of serves to set up our characters. I mean, we do get Reagan calling upon Captain Howdy on the Ouija board, which in film, horror films specifically, we always know there's that one trigger event that, causes all the chaos. But, and Friedkin and Blatty certainly did not handhold in establishing our characters, especially with the dynamic between Father Karras and his mother. Her death seems to kind of happen out of nowhere and is mentioned but not shown before we get that kind of trippy dream sequence of Father Karras attempting to run after his mother going down the steps to the subway. Cole, what do you think of how Blatty adapted his own novel and the choice of taking essentially an hour to establish our characters and to set up the possession?
During my watching, I thought it was very slow. I thought it took a very long time to get to the Exorcist, the point, and it was kind of the opposite of what I thought, because when I recalling watching it the first time, I thought it was like a lot of the exorcism, all that stuff, which I mean they do get to it, but it's not a big chunk of the movie. I mean they spend an hour, like you said, setting it all up, but I kind of like the anticipation, because you know when you're going into the movie Exorcist, there's going to be an exorcist. You know what's going to happen, but it's kind of I feel like the director took a deliberate time, like long drawn out time to make you wonder and kind of wait and almost forget and want the possession to happen, and then it just kind of comes out at you when you lower your guard, so to speak, because you spent an hour watching it. So during the first hour, I was a little annoyed, but then once it hit me, I was, kind of into it, to be honest.
Yeah, and although there's no possession in the first hour, Friedkin said he wanted to use a psychological device called expectancy set on his audience. And essentially, expectancy set is when someone walks down a street where a crime has recently been committed, and then they feel butterflies. And Friedkin definitely played on this, knowing the crowd was coming in to see a film about possession. And it's this preformed knowledge of what the film is about that creates nervousness in the audience. And the anticipation of horror was almost as bad as the horror itself for some people. Kevin, do you think, in this first hour, that psychological device was used effectively?
Absolutely. I think that for me personally, going into it, having the exact same expectation as probably a lot of those crowd members in the 1970s, it effectively played on it. Knowing what the film was likely to be about, but not getting that release of actually having the payoff was very world building. It had an ability to take each character and kind of lend to what I knew was going to happen, but allowed them to kind of play it out for themselves. It was kind of interesting where I kind of thought that Father Karras was going to be our main exorcist when, in reality it wasn't. And he was kind of just one of our, main characters who had to play a side point. So the film just did a great job of building the expectations of kind of what we were going towards. And if, like Cole said, I was kind of into it. Right? We got to it and we were like, I'm okay here. We've been here for an hour and I still want to see what happened. I didn't want to check where the time was. I didn't want to see where the slider was. I wanted to let it play out for what it was, and I'm glad I did.
Yeah. Kelly?
I think as a 2020 audience of this, imagine that you are a demon possessing someone's body. And much like this movie, when a priest walks in, you have an expectation of he's going to do some religious works. He's going to throw a crucifix in front of my face. He's going to throw some water on me. And I'm going to laugh in his face because I'm that powerful. And then after about an hour of it being this really dull in the background thing, it actually starts to get pretty serious. And that's what this movie does, but it's the reverse.
Yeah. I think that I enjoyed the 70s aspect of this film, and I liked us, I could live in this kind of 70s kind of time, and William Friedkin, I guess he did documentaries before he actually did The Exorcist, and the first hour of this film almost seems like we're just kind of sitting and watching a slice of life in the 70s until we start really getting, something's going wrong with Reagan, and I think you can get that kind of realistic feeling to the film until the possession really starts happening. And so, like, when we first start seeing signs of something wrong with Reagan, Chris takes her to the doctors, and these doctors run several tests on Reagan, but they can't figure out what's wrong with her. And I feel there's almost a misogynistic angle to how the doctors treat Chris. They keep telling her that maybe, you know, what's wrong with her daughter, like they don't really know. But she keeps saying that she knows her daughter and something else is going on with her, and they don't seem to listen to her. And Kelly, do you think this was a comment on misogyny in the 70s and also, like, the poor nature of mental health treatment back then? And also, was this a comment on how children's personalities can change when they deal with divorce?
It's a lot of questions. I'll try to remember all of them.
How about answer the last one?
How children's personalities can change after divorce. Yeah. I would say I didn't really think that at first, but I could see how someone could view the movie through that lens. I think what I kind of liked was that there's really hardly a mention of the father, and it's just not even a presence. And not like I'm a aficionado for movies in that like early 70s time, but I don't know how many like single moms were depicted in film, so that's kind of groundbreaking on its own and pretty standout for the movie. So I definitely got the perspective of the misogynist take, especially when it's her versus like a table of like 20 male doctors looking back at her. That's pretty in your face, I think, and I like that they depicted it that way. I am chewing in the back of my mind on this idea of divorce the entire time. And I can definitely see that perspective, though I hadn't considered it before. So it's not like I have anything intelligent to say, but I'm glad that you brought that up because, yeah, I could definitely, that's a valid idea.
Cole, do you think this film was a little ahead of its time in some of the themes it was trying to portray in the first hour?
I would say yeah. I mean, the fact that they're doing a whole possession movie and all that stuff for sure. And then, like Kelly alluded to, I can't really remember a lot of like single mother based like movies where that's not like the focus of the movie, right? Like there's obviously some movies where that's the whole story, but this is just a part of life. And with divorce, you know, I'm a child of divorced parents and stuff like that. And I think, you know, kids act differently around different parents, and like with divorce, it's a lot of change and stuff. So that I think is a very good point. I didn't necessarily think about it during the film, but I definitely can see some of that kind of put into the film, and can see some of that emotion. And I really did like the fact that you never meet the father. He's never there. He never shows up. I liked that aspect of it where he's just not there, and he's not gonna be a part of it. So even though they kept kind of talking down to her and how they would, I think if it was the dad, they would probably listen more. But the fact that it was a woman, it was a mom, and it was also a young girl, and you know she's going through lots of changes, they were very, very dismissive of a lot of it, and I thought that was pretty good, especially for the time. For
sure. So then we get into the actual possession, and Reagan is finally possessed after a psychiatrist hypnotizes her, and she basically grabs his testicles and squeezes them and tries to pop them. Classic. You know, I've done that before, too. The voice acting of the demon was done by an actress named Mercedes McCambridge. Friedkin picked her because he wanted the voice actor to sound a little more androgynous, and she was reportedly a recovered alcoholic before the film was produced, and she told director William Friedkin that to be able to do the voice of the demon, she would need him to provide her whiskey, cigarettes, and raw eggs, and to strap her to a chair while she recorded the demon voice. So she drank whiskey, smoked cigarettes, and ate raw eggs, and recorded this voice while strapped to a chair and squatting so that she was in actual pain. And Dick Smith was the makeup artist for the possessed Reagan as well. And there was also 2 priests on set. So Mercedes, after these scenes, after she recorded the voices, she would actually get up and just go crying to the priests that were on set. Kevin, what do you think about the voice and makeup work of Reagan, and does it hold the test of time?
Holy shit. I need to digest everything you just said before I even answer that question, because like that's just fucking on the other side. Like to go through your performance and then have to run crying to a priest because of what you put yourself through, mind blowing. But that being said, she did a fantastic job. I think that the voice of Pazuzu, the voice of this demon, is incredibly crucial to this entire effectiveness of this film. It has to be not just crude in the dialogue, but crude in the delivery. And I think that this group did an incredibly great job of doing that. We get some absolutely vulgar lines in this movie. Things that you would never say in any capacity, even in film. But we get it here. And because you have a demon saying it, it gives it a pass. But you still have to have someone deliver those lines, right? And it was absolutely incredible how you could get that over and still make it not overly cringeworthy. Like, there was points where it was truly like, I believe what you're saying is demonic voices, not like, oh, I'm eye-rolling at this ridiculous so-and-so. So I think they did a really good job with that, and the dialogue that they chose was, while vulgar, it was just delivered in a great way, and I thought it was a plus to the movie.
Kelly, you were saying this was a bit cheesy. Do you think everything Mercedes went through was all for naught? Do you think she might as well have just not strapped herself to the chair, not drank any whiskey or cigarettes, and not ate any raw eggs?
Yeah, listen, I do all of these things before every single podcast, and it's really not that big of a deal.
There we go.
You guys should hear my voice the rest of the time. This is while I'm squatting and strapped to a chair. But
something
no.
only that could happen in an early 70s film. That's
yeah. What I will say is, like, as when I say there's a cheese factor, I don't mean it's like when we watched like Friday the 13th, the cheese factor for that movie was so much that I really kind of didn't like it. I still like The Exorcist. Cole's making such faces.
Kevin Bacon. You're telling me you don't like Kevin Bacon?
And I've actually seen Friday the 13th in its entirety, so like I'm with Cole. Like Kevin fucking
campy,
Bacon, man.
But like I can admit it's campy, but yeah.
But I hope that you guys know what I mean. Where like Friday the 13th and The Exorcist, they are not built the same.
I don't. Explain.
Yeah. Yeah. Come on. Kevin Bacon.
I will explain no further. If you know, you know. So, but seriously, guys, do you guys know what the difference is when I'm saying these things? There's something like
voice and makeup for Reagan. You found other things cheesy, maybe the lines that were said.
Yeah. I feel like Friday the 13th, I guess, is like it's entertainment value, and like the bed scene is amazing. Like. That's like life-changing. That's really, really amazing. But the rest of it is just like entertainment value to me, from my perception. The Exorcist, though, I see it as like, it's almost like kind of like high art in its way. And it's not just because it's all new, but because it's standing the test of time. The things that this demon says are not set in like 1970s lingo. In fact, they're still like very known as demonic now. And it's very much which came first, the Exorcist lingo, or like this kind of innate idea of how demons talk. Like, because both are still very prevalent in the culture today. So on that, they got it. The makeup still stands the test of time, and you guys know that I'm into like checking out that kind of stuff. So when I say there's a cheese factor, it's not surrounding the big bad. They, I think, got that on the head, and it's still like I can see like the scary element even of it even today. That hasn't like lost its kind of like shock value.
I mean, I get that you're saying a demon would say your mother sucks cocks in hell, but I get told that all the time by people on the street when I'm walking down the street, and I just think it's like something somebody says to me because I don't know why, but
unironically, I was
like,
going to say,
morning.
I think
it's kind of like good morning in New York, you know?
I was going to say more people talk like that on a regular basis than ever before, but maybe more people just have demonic influence. Damn it. Oh, no.
Cool.
Man.
Well, I got a couple points. First, for you, Eric, the reason why they're saying that is because, you know, you're the mailman. So no one likes the bills coming. That's off of Kelly's thing with the lingo. Warner Brothers actually wanted to change the name of the movie because when they did a survey, no one knew what an exorcist was. So you might have some validity to that because, exorcism, everyone knows what that is now. But apparently back then, when they surveyed people, no one knew what it was. So maybe a little thing going on there. And then lastly, I forgot my last point.
Were you going to defend Freddy Krueger?
Oh, no.
Jason.
What I was going to say...
Well, Freddy Krueger's
Yeah,
Nightmare on Elm Street.
yeah.
Jason's
He got
Friday the
excited
13th.
about
Oh my
Friday
gosh,
the
you guys,
13th.
I meant
Come
to
on,
say
Cole.
Nightmare on Elm Street the whole time. I wasn't talking about Friday the 13th.
Oh, okay.
Friday the 13th is pretty campy too,
Yeah,
though.
Friday the 13th's got Kevin Bacon, and there's an amazing
So
bed
sorry.
scene where
You
dude
guys,
gets
every time you said
stabbed
Kevin
through the
Bacon, I was
throat.
like, I don't remember him and Freddy Krueger, but I'm not going to say anything.
You were thinking Nightmare on Elm Street. I mean, both have their cheesy aspects to it, but like
I mean,
they're
they're all
Yeah,
pretty
both have
fucking
their cheesy
cheesy. Let's
aspect.
be honest here.
But my final point was actually a question to you, Eric. Do you think this movie had so many bad shit happen because they had people strapped to chairs, squatting, drinking whiskey as a recovering alcoholic, smoking cigs, eating raw eggs?
Yeah.
Manifestation, baby. Sounds like they were doing it to themselves.
Well, okay,
Who knows
the
what they did to
miscarriage,
those old
though,
ladies
and then-
during
I
this
agree
film.
with
That's
Cole.
all I'm saying.
Burt,
I
Burt
think Cole's
Denning's
onto something.
dying, who actually died in the film, and Father Karras' mother, the actress, dying,
They
who
were
actually
both
died in the
old.
film. No, Burt.
Yeah,
I mean, he
were
was.
they
I don't
strapped
know.
to chairs? I don't know what they
Yeah.
were doing underneath there. I only saw them from the waist up. Who knows what kind of fucked
The
up shit was
miscarriages.
going on?
Well, no, that happened like while people were watching it, but still, there's a stillbirth on set of the wife of somebody, and that had nothing.
Yeah.
Well, that goes to
lot of
like
crazy shit.
where you look
Well,
is
they're
where you
probably
land,
smoking
right?
cigarettes and drinking whiskey.
Yeah.
If you have an
Could be-
idea going into
It
this
could be the
movie,
raw
Whiskey
eggs. I bet you
Cole.
raw eggs caused stillbirths, so maybe
Listen.
someone else was eating raw eggs.
nobody polled the audience walking
When
out
did
of the
Rocky
Wizard of
come out?
Oz on how many had miscarriages.
4
It
years
was
later?
probably just as many, if not more.
Wasn't that because of lead poisoning or some shit?
Could be.
I mean, The Wizard
So,
of Oz was a horror movie.
On top
right?
of the voice and makeup, this film
Anyway.
was done with all practical effects, just like Cole likes. The 360-degree head spin was actually done with a rubber dummy.
Asbestos.
And this is from Looper.com. Friedkin's special effects team created a fiberglass mold of Linda Blair's head set atop a rubber dummy used for the body. So basically they had a rubber dummy and a fiberglass mold of Linda Blair's head. And the team even added moving eyes and breath to the dummy, and they made to make this all more convincing. And Linda Blair also had a hidden tube attached to her chin that shot out split pea soup, and that was what was used for the vomit. In fact, the first time Father Karras is puked on, Linda Blair was not supposed to projectile vomit onto his face, but she did by accident, and so that was an authentic reaction that Father Karras, aka Jason Miller, had when he got vomited on. And the room that Reagan was in was actually a set where they brought in restaurant-style air conditioners so that the temperature would be lowered to 40 degrees in the room that they were shooting in. So the visible breath you see in the scenes was real, albeit the camera lights warmed up the room a bit so everyone wouldn't freeze over. And the bed was attached to wires that was also attached to actress Linda Blair, who was in a harness during many of these scenes. And multiple special effects people would pull and yank on the wires to create the scenes where the bed moved and where Reagan was lifted off the bed. So, Cole, do you think these practical special effects hold or stand the test of time?
I do. I really do. Especially when you think about, older movies that try to do any type of CGI. Like, CGI at this point is phenomenal, but up until maybe the last 5, maybe 10 years, it was not very good. And I still think, even now with CGI, the practical effects, the thing that CGI doesn't have is the impact of it. And when you're talking about a person being possessed and thrown around on a bed and stuff like that, I don't think you can get that kind of feeling or that impact and the genuinely reaction of a practical effect of that person. So I think if you can do it practical, I think you should push the boundaries and try and do it as much as possible. CGI should only be a tool to kind of add a little spice up and add just a little dash or fix something, right? It shouldn't be hey, we're just going to film it on a blue screen, just act like you're possessed and we'll fix it in post. That's not good. I don't think that gives you the same like satisfaction and validity and impact as practical effects. And this movie came out in the 70s, and it still has a lot of that like impact and terror and stuff that I really enjoyed. And I think if they tried to do anything different, it would not be as successful, and it definitely would not stand the test of time.
Kelly, do you agree? Does this stand the test of time, all of these practical special effects?
So I don't know this for a fact, but I'm going to say it like I know it like it's a fact. I think Tim Burton was heavily inspired by this film. Okay, going on.
I'd say this film probably inspired a lot of films. Like, A24 films like Hereditary definitely, were inspired by this.
So in that mindset of, I'm sure Tim Burton saw this movie, and then he goes on to do, like, Beetlejuice. And I felt, like, the Beetlejuice, like, callbacks to The Exorcist are so palpable, not only because he literally says it out of his own mouth and references the movie.
How many times? Like 67 times?
And it keeps getting funnier.
67 times!
So that, and then I was also thinking of, like, Pee-wee's Big Adventure during the Large Marge scene, which, when I was very little, was very jarring. But the reason I'm giving this, like, long side like dialogue is because I look back at those Tim Burton films, and it's not like they were trying to be as horrifying or serious as The Exorcist, but because of the special effects and like the claymation, and the just tons of other kind of like effects that they put into those movies, and there's a reason for it, but it sets it in that time frame, and it's not really going to leave that like 80s kind of experience because of that. In comparison, The Exorcist is kind of timeless in that regard. We had just reviewed a movie that was set in the 70s with costuming and everything. This movie could easily have been, in my opinion, like released 10 years ago, and I would have believed it because of the way that they went about these practical effects. And as I mentioned previously, like the dialogue that the demon uses, all these things make it timeless as to today, at least. I don't know how we'll be talking in 10 more years, but it's these kind of choices, I think, that make it like a horror that like lasts longer.
Mm-hmm. And I also got to say, like, another inspiration this film had, like the little girl in the white dress, that's The Ring, that's The Grudge. That's, I think even Blackcoat's daughter had a scene with that. That's
The Shining.
The Shining. That's a thing. Like, the little girl in the white dress is, I think what makes this film, like, scary to so many people is the fact that, like, a little, like, 12-year-old girl, she could turn into this. She could have her whole personality change, and her face could have all these cuts on it. Just, like, seeing that aspect makes it more disturbing than any slasher film that you could see, in my opinion. It's just the disturbing aspect of the film.
Yeah, her harming herself, her like saying sexual things is like super messed up.
Yeah, for sure. And before I ask this question, I wanted to add another fun fact in here. There's a scene where Father Karras is listening back to recordings of Reagan and the demon, and then a phone rings and scares Father Karras. That phone ring was actually an overdub added in post-production. What actually happened was that William Friedkin, our director, carried a gun around with him on set and would randomly shoot the gun up in the air, and the gun was filled with blanks, of course, but he still was going around shooting a gun on set. And to get that authentic reaction out of Jason Miller, Friedkin fired a gun in the air while the camera was rolling, and so that was actually an authentic reaction when that phone ring went off. Now, Kevin, I know you're like more new to watching horror films, but you've said paranormal horror doesn't scare you at all. Did you find this film scary, including the jump scares?
No, I did not.
Okay.
I did not find this film scary, but I definitely found it intriguing and worth watching. And I'll get to it in my review, but to answer your question simply, no, I didn't really find it scary. It did have a lasting effect on me in the sense that I was thinking about it after the film ended. So there was some perspective of it. The other part that was really interesting for me as being a good Catholic boy growing up. All of the major points where the Mass was being recited, I was literally able to recite those parts word for word because I was an altar boy and all of those fun things. So it was an interesting take in the movie being very close to home in some of my past.
Yeah. And to be fair, Kelly, like a lot of critics actually trashed this film when it came out. It had very mixed reviews. Paulina Kael from the New York Times completely trashed it, and the main criticism of The Exorcist was that there was too much vulgarity for no point. The crucifix masturbation scene, the spider walk scene was put in later, the your mother sucks cocks in hell, the head spin, so on and so forth. Kelly, do you think the vulgarity in the possession scenes was necessary?
Was it crucifix masturbation or was it self-harm?
She was putting it into her vagina.
I thought she was stabbing her upper thighs with it.
I think she was stabbing all over. So maybe, I would say self-harm.
I mean, didn't she shove her mother's face in there certainly quickly after that point?
Yes, she did, and you could hear the noises and everything.
Okay, now that we went on this diatribe, what was your question?
Do you think the vulgarity in the possession scenes were necessary?
Oh my gosh. Don't make me blush, but also I feel like there could have been a lot more. That's where my threshold is. And maybe that's just like a test of time. If a little girl's possessed by a demon, like go all the way out, like make it super on top, like crazy. Because most of the time there are these effects that we've kind of mentioned that happens to her, but a lot of the time she's just tied to the bed. And I wish that there was more like back and forth between her and Father Karras. I like when he's just like, if you can do that, then like do it again. Yeah. I wish that there was more banter.
What's too vulgar a display of power, Father Karras?
Which is so good. And like it's like delivered so coolly too.
In time. Yeah.
Like all of them are so quotable. I just want more. And I know that like the things that she says are like super shocking for an audience of the 70s. But like I said, it's like how a lot of people just speak online today, which is very much like which came first. But I don't know. I could have gone with even more. Even with you're saying like it's either masturbation or self-harm or one or the other. Or maybe it's all congealed together if you're possessed. Like maybe make that more apparent. Not with being like gross about it, but I hope you know what I mean though. Like it's upsetting to see a child like behave in that kind of way. Just like. Mm-hmm. Go even harder. Like, why not? Like, you've busted down the doors. Like, light everything on fire now.
So, yeah, I mean, on rewatching this film, I definitely found a little bit of it cheesy, no doubt. Like, it's aged a bit. Not the practical special effects, but, like, I guess the split pea soup. That definitely ages it a bit. And I definitely wasn't scared, as much watching this film as I was a long time ago. But what I think really holds or makes this film hold this stand the test of time, I think it's the directing and cinematography. And I think that's really captured in that beautiful shot of when Father Merrin arrives at the house. He seems to be perfectly standing in a fog with the light from Reagan's room shining down upon him. So, Cole, what did you think of the cinematography of this film?
I think the cinematography was very well done. I thought... every camera was very thoughtfully placed and put you in I think it, we talk about cinematography and kind of conveying emotion without saying anything or doing anything. I think the cinematography was done in a way that kind of put you very in the situation, especially with the exorcism and the cinematography with people talking and the setup was fine. But once you got into the room and started seeing a lot of the stuff and the stairway scene and some of these, more famous scenes, being thrown through windows and whatnot, I thought overall the cinematography was very well done. I thought, the directing and the vision he had, he did a very good job portraying what he wanted, and I think it showed through the film, and I enjoyed it.
I agree. And Kelly?
I'm going to go for a while. Do you want to get out your thought first?
I was just going to kind of point out there was a constant motif of ascension and descension. with the stairs, like Father Karras going up the stairs. Also, Father Merrin walking up the hill when he's first approached about, exorcising the demon from Reagan. And then also the mother going down the stairs into the subway. It's kind of this ascension and descension, and like that's a common motif in Christianity: ascension to a higher power or descension to a lower power. And that was placed very purposely throughout the film, per William Friedkin in the documentary. So, yeah. Kelly?
Okay, King. Good point out. What I was going to say with cinematography, this movie, I didn't know that I was building this theory until just this moment, but my theory is that cinematography is, in the end, what makes a movie timeless. Because if you can take a screenshot of a movie you appreciate and it lives on as a still and is a work of art that other people can appreciate just visually, that's what gets the conversation going of what is that from, whether it becomes a meme, whether it becomes art on your wall, whether it becomes like a vision of like a tattoo or otherwise. These are the things that we then take away from the movie and share with others. So this movie's an example of that. I think that when we described like good cinematography in our previous reviews, we say like you can take a screenshot of it at any time. And it's like, it's beautiful. It's composed well. It's lit well. It has a softness. It has a sharpness. It has, like depth between extremes on many, many regards. And I think that this movie follows that entirely. That being said, it means you need to knock it out of the park on story, acting, composing, everything else that makes a movie. But at the end of the day, you can get all of those, but if you have bad cinematography, I think it's only a good movie for right then. If you have good cinematography on top of that, boom, like you've built a bridge that's going way into the future that people are going to use to get back to your movie. So if this movie had different cinematography, I don't think it would be regarded as like one of like the first like classics of the horror genre.
Yep. And fun fact, William Friedkin did most of the takes in this film in one take. He is not a believer of doing multiple takes. So if Stanley Kubrick directed this film, this probably would have taken another 5 years. So, yeah. So let's finally dip into our grand finale, the final exorcism scene. Kevin, what did you think of the final exorcism scene and the choice to kill off both Father Merrin and Father Karras?
I absolutely love going into this not knowing how it was going to end. I thought that was brilliant for me. So I'm watching this going, all right, how are we going to have a happy ending? We have a sad ending. Who's going to win? Who's going to lose? I am very curious how this goes. And we get to the final climax where Father Merrin kicks Father Karras out of the room. And at that point, I knew that there was something that was going to change. At that point, you separated the two good entities, and that was essentially what the demon was hoping to do. And clearly we found in the next scene where Father Merrin is now deceased, Father Karras has to decide what to do. That scene has a lot to it, right? We see the output of emotion from Father Karras. Throughout the whole movie, I kind of noted the amount of times we saw the priests kind of give into some of their vices, some of their emotions. Father Karras talks about losing his faith in this film. He has a clear crisis with losing of his mother. He likes to drink, he likes to smoke, he likes to go out with friends. I mean, he seems like a regular guy. And I think that's what also makes the crowd empathize to him a little bit. The movie watchers kind of can see themselves a little bit in this hero priest who, in the moment where you're not really sure what's going to happen, he selflessly takes it upon himself to, sacrifice himself in the aid of destroying this demon. I loved it. I honestly thought it was a great segue. It happened so fast. It was so quick. It wasn't a drawn out scene, and I was really happy with that. It was just kind of a bang, bang, bang. All of a sudden, you have to digest what you just watched, and I think that was really effective. It wasn't one of those things where you had to have them battling back and forth on the brink of whether or not they were going to succeed or not. You didn't have to make them think. The crowd just had to deal with what they saw. And I thought that was brilliant. I thought that was a really cool moment for me. And the rest of the film made you just kind of have to think about that whole ending, because it abruptly ends relatively quickly after that point. So as the final exorcism goes, I thought it was a great scene. It was probably the best scene in the whole film. It what brings the whole thing together. If you're going to make a 2-hour film about this, you might as well really go hard when you're going to hammer on the point. And I think they did a great job.
Cole, what do you think of the final exorcism scene and the choice to kill off both Father Merrin and Father Karras?
I think it worked. I think that's, I think it was a good choice to kill both of the fathers off, because you had built a relationship with one of them throughout like the story. You kind of got some of his backstory, his mother, and all that stuff, and he also didn't know if priesthood was for him, or if he wanted to continue to be a father, or if he was gonna walk away from it all. And you started to build this attachment to him, and then just in a matter of a couple seconds, he gets thrown out the window and cracks his head and dies. And I did not remember that, and it kind of surprised me, because I thought it was going to take the stereotypical, he's going to, one priest goes down and he's going to finish it, even though he's not, didn't fully believe, but he's a believer now, and he's going to continue and, take over as the main exorcism father of the order or whatever. And then he gets taken out just, so quickly and so fast. And I did not expect it, to be honest, because I didn't remember it, and I thought it was a very, very good choice to the movie, was to kind of have it where everyone involved, besides essentially the daughter and the mother, are gone. The demon's gone. All the fathers are gone. Like, everyone that, was there to support them basically sacrificed it all to help save this girl, so to speak.
And Kelly, finally, what did you think of the final exorcism scene and the choice to kill off both Father Merrin and Father Karras?
Kill them all. I think that's the right move to make. But I think it should very much make the audience full of fear, because if these are that's the oldest exorcist we have, and the only one with enough prominence to rise to the cause of becoming the new youngest exorcist, they're both gone, everybody. From now on, whoever is possessed, I don't know who we could possibly turn to, because the Catholic Church does not have an answer for us. So demon-possessed people get to reign the world from now on, and sometimes when I look at the world, I think that just might be true. Is that what they were trying to tell us with this ending?
No? I guess you want to get right to it, or... Yeah.
What about Russell Crowe? Russell Crowe is the Pope's exorcist. He's back.
I guess another question I had, more of a large, philosophical question. Do you think Father Karras went to hell for committing suicide, or is he ascended to heaven for martyrdom? Kevin?
Well,
because that's open-ended. They purposely
No, I
made
think
it
he
open-ended.
absolutely is ascended to heaven, 1,000%. No doubt about it. He defended a innocent from evil, sacrificed himself for the greater good, and in the end was also forgiven by his priest friend as he lay dying on the ground. So he absolutely 100% ascended to heaven, both canonically.
Mm-hmm.
Canonically, there you go. Canonically, as well as in the movie. So, yeah.
Kelly, what do you think? Because you actually had a different answer after we watched this.
Did you
You
ask?
thought he went right to hell for committing suicide.
I didn't say that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I thought you said that. I thought, yeah.
Nah, what I was going to say is, I don't know what all of you Catholic boys think. I was raised Southern Baptist. Did he have Jesus in his heart? Was he born again? No? Well, he's gonna burn in hell. For as long as eternity lasts.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was pretty sure you might have said something about him going to hell, but either way.
No, I deject the idea that Catholicism gives us that suicide means hell. I
Well,
disagree.
martyrdom, I guess, like, is what brings people to heaven too. So on the other end of it, but yeah,
I don't know. What I will say is
in
I
the
liked
Catholic religion.
how
Pretty
Kevin
good
said
perk
earlier.
in Call of Duty, though.
How Kevin said earlier with that scene of just like, he's just like, come into me, and then we get like a flash of his face, and makeup team like did it up again, and then out the window. And it's what Kevin said, bang, bang, bang. I will say I just loved that they like addressed the whole thing that way. So that was good.
All right, well, finishing up here, William Friedkin said in the documentary Leap of Faith that The Exorcist was about the mystery of faith, and people had applied a lot of other analysis to the film over the years. But he said, "I never thought about imposing metaphor or meaning. I just shot by instinct." He said he had somewhat of a sleepwalker security throughout the filming of The Exorcist, to the point that he actually shot most of these scenes in one take. And here's another example of Friedkin being an insane director. Before Father O'Malley gave the rites of passage to Father Karras at the bottom of the steps, he actually punched the actor in the face that played Father O'Malley, and he pushed him in front of the camera when the actor was doubting if he could do the scene. And those steps are actual steps you can visit in Georgetown, along with the house that is shown in the exterior shots, by the way. And what I think Blatty and Friedkin were really trying to say in The Exorcist, with Father Merrin and Father Karras giving their lives to save this little girl, is that sometimes you have to make great sacrifices for the greater good to prevail. And William Friedkin actually said that he wasn't very religious before making this film, but for the purpose of this film, he allowed himself to fully believe in demonic possession and exorcisms. And I honestly think much of this film was about Father Karras' crisis of faith and him finding that faith again. And in the 2000 version of the film, Father Merrin said about demonic possession, "The point is to make us despair, to see ourselves as animal and ugly, and to reject the possibility that God could love us." And I honestly think you could apply this notion to humanity as a whole. Even if you don't believe in Christianity, you might say that this film tries to get you to believe in the greater good of people, even if you see the horrible things that some people do. Cole, you were gonna say
Amen,
something?
brother. Amen.
Yeah, I took this film as kids are the root of all evil. Just kids suck, man. Like, they would have been fine if the kid just didn't fuck with the Ouija board and let him get possessed. So that's
The
my
older
takeaway.
you become, the closer to God you land.
Yeah, for sure.
Bigger the
All right,
hair,
well-
the closer to God.
Also that.
All right, you want to get into our reviews?
Are we reviewing this?
Yeah. Well, might as well, right? Kelly, do you want to start first?
Yeah. Halloween.
Yeah, I'm not going to
vibes.
give it like a proper, not to say not a proper, but
Not an A through F, or I was going to give it A through F.
okay. As if that this movie was an A24 movie, which we do rate from A to F, including E with the 24 for anyone who is only popping in on this episode. That's what we do on all of the other episodes. If I'm going to rate The Exorcist, which I hadn't considered rating before, I feel like I don't have much to say. I feel like I've talked a lot this episode, so what could I possibly add on top of it? I think that it stands the test of time, like I said, which gives it a lot of props. But there is a cheese factor to it. Can a horror movie ever be made that doesn't have a certain level of cheese? I ask myself and the moon. I don't think that it's possible. Can a movie from me be rated in an A if there's such a cheese to it? It's too much cheese. So, middle of the road, but I like it more than I don't like it. It would be, if it was A24, it would be a C plus 24.
Holy shit, that's low. All right. You're not giving any props for it to be a classical film or a classic film, I guess.
That's the pros.
Yeah. All right. Kevin?
It's very odd giving this movie any sort of rating in the sense that we've given 50 plus ratings to A24 films, and it's just so difficult to think about this from any perspective of an A24 movie, but I'm going to do my best. I sat and watched this movie, like I said, in the basement by myself kind of late last night after
having been hanging out for a while, and it was kind of one of those where I expected to roll my eyes and have to feel like I was doing homework, where I was doing something that I didn't want to do. Presently surprised that didn't happen. I actually enjoyed the entirety of this watching, all 2 hours plus whatever. I was pretty much enthralled from start to finish. I think that The Exorcist did a great job of bringing me in from a historical aspect. So it was a historical movie, a classic movie, as Eric said, something that really had me interested because I knew of the gravitas that it kind of portrayed as being, an icon in cinema history. And as we've kind of talked about, the first real horror movie, or not really first
supernatural horror
but
film.
There you go. Right. So regardless, it holds a specific spot in cinema history. So for me, watching it with that lens and that guise kind of helped me give it a lot more props than I probably would have. Mostly because, like Eric had asked me, it doesn't scare me. And it is not something that I normally would really give too much leeway to, I guess, or too much, I'm not even looking for the word. My point is that it surprised me at how much I enjoyed it, and I could see equally why it was such an impressive movie at the time and why it does stand the test of time. So B24 or B Halloween or B Exorcist or whatever the hell you want to call it.
B24.
B. It's a B. It's a B24 for
Be
me.
Halloween. Do it.
B Halloween.
Cole, you up next.
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of horror movies, and I'm a big fan of some of the older ones, even if they do have the cheese factor, like Friday the 13th, or even Nightmare on Elm Street. I like both of them. I think I guess I also appreciate some of the history behind them, and I love practical effects so much. And I think The Exorcist is one of those movies of, cinema history that it kind of set the tone. And, it might not be the scariest movie nowadays. It might not be the one that pushes the envelope, but at the time it definitely did. I mean, we're talking about back then, they thought, at one point The Wizard of Oz was a horror movie, right? Like, people were scared of that movie, and we watched that as kids and thought it was funny. The Exorcist was one of those movies that came out and it kind of revolutionized the whole thing. And I did not realize how successful it was when it did come out, which is kind of mind blowing that it, if you, with the injustice of inflation, is probably one of the most successful movies Warner Brothers has ever done. I love the practical effects. I feel like it still stands the test of time. I really liked what he had going for him. And something about watching these old school horror movies just kind of brings, I don't know, just kind of some enjoyment. I really just like watching them. So I'm going to give this, it's not the perfect movie. It's not, my favorite movie. I'm not the biggest paranormal horror. I'm a big creature feature film like The Thing and Jaws and stuff like that and Alien. But I still love this movie. I'm going to give it an A-24.
All right. Well, I guess, okay, if you look at it from the angle of, I'm judging this against other A24 films and horror films, and, I would have to think about, if this film came out just 10 years ago or something. I still think it's one of the best horror films ever made. It's almost like a thing of, the Beatles or the Rolling Stones. Some people nowadays, they don't give them as much respect, I think, as they deserve, but they influenced so much music that was to come. And so I'm going to have to give this a A+24. I think the directing this was phenomenal. I think that if you place it against the other A+24 films that I've reviewed, like Moonlight and Ex Machina, I think it deserves to be right up there. I think that the themes in this film and the groundbreaking cinematography of it, I mean, William Friedkin was an absolutely insane man for everything he did on set. But he made a hell of a fucking film, and he paved new paths in cinema that were never there before. And I just give so much props to people that can pave those paths. So I got to give it a A+24, and this is one of my favorite films of all time. Well, we will be back next week with another A24 film review. Thank you for listening, and happy Halloween. Hope you're going to have a spooky time tonight. Please scare a lot of kids. Throw the candy at them. Do not give it to them. And have a great night, everyone. And happy Halloween.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Your mother sucks cocks in hell, Karras, you faithless swine.